My son held a secret wedding because I was too ghetto, so I gave him a $250,000 bill and an eviction notice. She banned me from my own son's wedding and called me embarrassing. So I turned their luxury penthouse into my shoe closet. They demanded a $50,000 wedding gift after excluding me, but I handed them receipts for every dollar I ever spent on him. I took everything back, girl. Let me tell you something. The devil works hard, but a mother who's been crossed, disrespected, and played for a fool, she works harder. And on that particular Monday afternoon, I was ready to clock in, put in some overtime, and shut the whole damn factory down. And the silence in my house was so loud it was humming. It's a specific kind of quiet, the kind that costs a fortune. It's the silence of triple-pane windows blocking out the Atlanta noise. The silence of thick insulated walls and solid oak doors that weigh 100 pounds each. It's the sound of success, a sound I had clawed my way into being able to afford. But at that moment, the silence was a pressure cooker, and I was just sitting inside of it, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest, waiting for the explosion. My phone, a silent slab of glass and metal on the white marble island, had been vibrating with calls from my son Malik for the last 24 hours. Nonstop. I hadn't answered a single one. I just watched his name flash on the screen, each buzz a pathetic little plea I had no intention of acknowledging. His picture, a smiling graduation photo I'd had framed, stared back at me from the caller ID. The boy in that photo, with his bright, hopeful eyes and a future I had paved in gold for him, was gone. In his place was a stranger, a coward, a thief of my joy. I knew they were coming. It was as certain as the sun rising in the Georgia sky. Their audacity wouldn't allow them to stay away. I could already picture it. They'd pull up my long, winding driveway in the obsidian black Mercedes I bought him, the engine purring a sound of wealth he hadn't earned. They'd be expecting tears. They'd be expecting me to be a wounded old woman, a tragic figure desperate for an explanation, ready to forgive and forget if they just said the right words. They had no idea that the woman they thought they knew, the soft-hearted, ever-giving Mama T, had died yesterday morning, right around 10:15 a.m., while scrolling through Instagram in her silk pajamas. The woman they were about to meet was someone else entirely. She was Teresa Jones, CEO, and she did not suffer fools. She liquidated bad assets. Then it came. Not the doorbell, not yet. First, it was the faint crunch of tires on the gravel of my circular driveway. I heard it because my senses were on high alert, every nerve ending tingling with a cold, predatory anticipation. I didn't move from my perch on the leather stool at the kitchen island. I just took a slow, deliberate sip of my Pellegrino, letting the crisp bubbles fizz on my tongue. I watched the security monitor discreetly built into my Sub-Zero refrigerator. The car, sleek and black, came to a stop. I watched them get out. My son and his, wife. The word felt like swallowing shards of glass. Chloe. I let them walk the long stone path to my front door, let them stand out there on my manicured porch under the oppressive heat of the Georgia sun. Let them wait. Let them wonder. Let the sweat bead on their foreheads and make his $2,000 tracksuit feel like a plastic bag. Patience is a weapon, child, and after a lifetime of hustling, I had sharpened mine to a razor's edge. Finally, the doorbell rang. A gentle 3-note chime that I'd had custom programmed. It usually sounded like wealth, like elegance, like a welcome. But today, it sounded like a battle cry. I didn't move. I smoothed down the front of my silk Emilio Pucci caftan, the vibrant blues and greens a stark contrast to the cold fury brewing in my soul. My home is my fortress. Every inch of it, from the gleaming Italian marble floors that felt cool against my bare feet to the original Kehinde Wiley portrait that greets you in the foyer. A powerful image of a black man on a throne that cost me more than my first house, was paid for in sweat, sleepless nights, and ambition so fierce it could burn you. The air itself is curated, smelling of a diptych baize candle that costs more than some people's weekly groceries. This house isn't just a building, it's a testament to a promise I made to myself as a broke, exhausted young girl. And I knew the two people on my doorstep were about to track their disrespect all over my sacred ground. The bell chimed again, a little more insistent this time, a little less polite, impatient. Of course, the world I built for him had taught him that he never had to wait for anything. I finally rose from my stool and walked to the door, my bare feet silent on the cool marble. I didn't rush. I let the anticipation build in my own chest, a cold, thrilling hum. I took one last deep breath, composed my face into a mask of impenetrable calm, and pulled open the massive 8-foot mahogany door. And there they were, my son Malik and Chloe. Malik had the decency to look uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other like a schoolboy caught cheating on a test. He was dressed to the nines, of course. That Amiri tracksuit that I knew for a fact set me back $2,000 because the Amex alert had popped up on my phone just last month. On his feet, a pair of Balenciaga sneakers so blindingly white, so pristine, they clearly never touched a real sidewalk. My money. Every last thread. Every stitch of his designer nonchalance was funded by my grit. And then there was Chloe. She was clinging to my son's arm like it was the last Birkin bag in the Hermes store. She was petite with a face that was pretty in that generic, over-filtered Instagram way, all sharp angles and pouty lips. She was wearing a cream-colored tweed blazer that was desperately trying to be Chanel, and a smug little smirk that made me want to test the full range of my vocabulary. Her eyes, cold and calculating, did a quick dismissive scan of my appearance, lingering on my comfortable caftan with a barely concealed sneer. The judgment was silent but deafening, as if I, in my own home, needed to be dressed for her approval. The girl was wearing a costume of wealth, while I was wearing the comfort that real wealth affords. She didn't know the difference. "Hey, Ma," Malik chirped, his voice strained and unnaturally bright. "You weren't answering your phone. We got worried." I just stared at him. I didn't smile. I didn't say, "Hello." I didn't say, "Come in." I just held his gaze, letting the silence stretch until it became a physical thing between us, a thick, uncomfortable wall. I wanted him to squirm in it. I wanted him to feel the weight of what he had done. "I've been busy," I said, my voice as flat and cool as the marble under my feet. Chloe, bless her trifling, audacious heart, decided this was her moment to shine. She jumped in, sensing Malik's weakness. "We were just so worried, Mama T," she cooed, her voice dripping with a sweetness so fake it could give you a cavity. The nickname Deshitisti Mama T, which my real friends and family used with love and respect, sounded like an insult coming from her lips, a mocking appropriation. "We just had to come see you in person. We have the most amazing news." Her voice was high and reedy, the kind that grates on your very last nerve. I finally stepped back, pulling the door wider. It wasn't an invitation. It was a challenge. "Come on in. Step into the lion's den. I dare you." They walked past me and I caught a whiff of Chloe's perfume. Baccarat Rouge 540. The it girl scent of the moment. Also charged to my credit card, I recalled from an itemized bill. Her eyes darted around my grand foyer, taking in the sweeping double staircase, the massive crystal chandelier I'd had imported from Italy, the sheer scale of the space. She'd been here dozens of times, but she always looked at my home with the same hungry, desperate glint in her eyes. It was the look of someone who covets the trophy, but despises the champion who won it. She wanted the life, but she didn't respect the work. "So," I said, closing the door with a soft but definitive click that echoed in the cavernous space. "What is this amazing news that required a house call?" I led them not to the cozy family room with its plush sofas, and family photos, but to the formal living room, a space I reserved for business and entertaining guests I needed to impress or intimidate. It was grand and imposing with 20-foot ceilings and a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked my 10 acres of meticulously landscaped grounds and the infinity pool that glittered under the afternoon sun. The furniture was all sharp lines and expensive fabrics in shades of cream and gray. It was a room designed to make people feel small. I didn't sit. I stood before the unlit marble fireplace, my arms crossed, a queen surveying her court. Malik cleared his throat, the sound swallowed by the room's acoustics. Well, you see, Chloe and I, we're ready to really start our life together, you know. Plant some roots. We've been looking at houses over in Buckhead. I just stared, my expression unchanging. The audacity was a physical presence in the room, so thick I could practically taste it on the back of my tongue. He was here in my house, talking about buying a mansion with his new wife less than 48 hours after they got married, and deliberately, maliciously excluded me from the ceremony as if I were a dirty secret. Chloe, ever the opportunist, saw Malik faltering and stepped in to take the lead. She placed a perfectly manicured hand on his chest, a gesture meant to look supportive, but was really a power move, a branding. He's mine. What Malik is trying to say, Teresa, she began, dropping the mama tie and using my first name with a familiarity she hadn't earned, a blatant power play, is that we're ready to graduate to the next stage. The apartment is cute for a rental, but it's time for us to own, to have a real family home. The apartment she was so casually dismissing as cute was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath luxury penthouse on Peachtree Road. It had a 24-hour doorman, a rooftop pool with cabanas, a state-of-the-art gym, and a view that stretched all the way to Stone Mountain, the apartment that was leased in my name. The apartment for which I paid the nearly $4,000 in rent, the utilities, the HOA fees, and the $200 a month parking fee every single month without fail, directly from my business account. I remained silent. One of the first lessons I learned in business is that the person who speaks first in a negotiation often loses. I let the silence hang in the air, heavy and suffocating. Let them feel it. Let them reveal their whole hand. Chloe finally let out an impatient little huff, her thin veneer of politeness cracking like cheap nail polish. She dropped the pretense. Look, we know you're traditional, and we know you believe in giving gifts for major life events. She paused, and her eyes met mine with a cold, challenging glint. And since you weren't at the wedding to give a gift, we figured you could just write us a check now. It would make things so much easier. It would be the perfect down payment. I felt my blood turn to ice, then to fire, then to ice again. That unmitigated, unadulterated, world-class gall. It was almost impressive. It was breathtaking. They weren't just ignoring the wound. They were pouring salt in it and asking me to pay for the salt. Malik, finally finding his voice, mumbled, "We found the perfect place. It's got a chef's kitchen and a great backyard. But the down payment is $50,000. There it was. The punchline to the cruelest joke I'd ever heard. They didn't come here to apologize. They didn't come to beg for forgiveness. They came with their hands out, expecting a reward for stabbing me in the heart. Chloe stood there, beaming, as if she had just proposed the most logical, reasonable solution in the world, as if she hadn't orchestrated my deepest humiliation and was now asking me to finance her happily ever after on the back of it. $50,000, I repeated, my voice dangerously soft, almost a whisper. A wedding gift. Exactly, Chloe chirped, clapping her hands together lightly, a gesture of pure, unadulterated triumph. And in that precise moment, I swear to you, a profound sense of calm washed over me. It was the calm of a chess master who sees her opponent walk their king directly into a checkmate she set up 10 moves ago. I almost smiled. Almost. Let me take you back. Because To understand the sheer magnitude of the disrespect happening on my white chenille sofa, you have to understand the woman they were trying to run game on. I'm not new money, you hear me? I'm sweat money. I didn't marry into it. I didn't get a lucky inheritance. I built it, brick by painstaking brick. My name is Teresa, but everyone who matters, everyone who was with me in the trenches, calls me Mama T. I earned that name when I was 22 years old, with a baby on my hip and a fire in my belly, living in a part of Atlanta the tour buses don't go to. I grew up with the smell of hot combs and collard greens, with a mother who worked her fingers to the bone as a housekeeper in the very Buckhead mansions I now own a better version of. I'll never forget it. I was about 10 years old, and my mama had brought me with her to work one Saturday because she couldn't find a sitter. I sat quietly in the corner of a massive, gleaming white kitchen, bigger than our whole apartment, while my mother scrubbed the floors on her hands and knees. The lady of the house, a woman named Mrs. Davenport with sprayed stiff blonde hair and diamonds on her fingers, even at 10 a.m., walked in. She looked down at my mother, then at me, then back at my mother. "Darlene," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "I told you not to bring your children here. This is a place of work, not a daycare." My mother, without looking up, just whispered, "Us knows." "Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, ma'am." Later, Mrs. Davenport accused my mother of stealing a small silver locket. It turned up a week later under a sofa cushion, but she never apologized. She just left my mother's pay on the counter and acted like nothing happened. I saw the humiliation in my mother's eyes, the way she held her shoulders a little less straight that day. And I swore on my mother's tired soul that my life and my son's life would be different. I would not be invisible, and neither would he. I went to cosmetology school at night, and child, I had a gift from God. I could lay a press and curl that could survive a Georgia summer. I could whip up a custom color that would shave 10 years off a woman's face. I started in my own cramped kitchen with a secondhand salon chair I bought for $20 and a sign I painted myself. The smell of burning hair, pink lotion, and blue magic grease wasn't just a smell. It was the scent of my hustle, the perfume of my ambition. I remember nights I was so tired my hands would shake, but I'd have another client knocking at the door. I saved every single dollar. I ate ramen noodles for dinner so I could afford professional grade shears. When Malik was a toddler, he'd play with rollers on the linoleum floor while I did a client's relaxer, and I'd whisper to him between foils, "We're going to have more than this, baby. Mama promises you. You're going to have the whole world." By the time I was 30, I opened my first salon, a tiny little storefront in a forgotten strip mall. I called it Teresa's Touch. I worked from sunup to past sundown. I was the first one to arrive and the last one to leave, sweeping up hair and counting my meager earnings. I missed school plays. I missed bedtime stories, and I poured every ounce of that guilt, every drop of that sacrifice into my son. I funneled all my hopes, my dreams, and my money into him. He never wanted for anything. While other kids were getting Payless sneakers, Malik was wearing the latest Jordans. I put him in the best private schools, the ones where he was one of a handful of black kids, so he could learn to navigate those rooms early. The day he turned 16, I'll never forget it. I didn't just buy him a used car. I drove him to the dealership and bought him a brand new, fully loaded Obsidian black Mercedes-Benz C-Class. It cost more than my first salon. Seeing the look on his face, pure, unadulterated joy, was my entire reward. For me, that was everything. It was proof that I had done it. I had broken the cycle of struggle. I paid for every single dime of his education at Morehouse College. No student loans for my baby. I wanted him to start his adult life with a clean slate, with a foundation of advantages I never even knew existed. When he graduated with a degree in business that I'd encouraged him to get, I didn't tell him to go find a job. I leased him that penthouse downtown. I told him, take a year, find your passion, don't rush into anything. I gave him an American Express Platinum card, linked to my account for his expenses. I was so proud of him, my handsome college educated son. He was the physical manifestation of all my work. He was my legacy. And then about a year ago, he brought home Chloe. The first time I met her, it was at that dinner I hosted. I had my personal chef prepare an incredible meal, pan-seared scallops, filet mignon, truffle macaroni, and cheese. The works? Chloe walked in, looked at my beautifully set dining table with its baccarat crystal and Christopher silverware, and said, "Oh, you have a chef. That must be nice. My mother always insists on cooking herself. It's more authentic." The implication was clear. My home, my life was inauthentic, store-bought. I remember smiling politely while a little alarm bell went off in my spirit. Throughout the dinner, she dropped these little bombs, these subtle digs wrapped in fake compliments. I was telling a funny story about a mishap at my first salon where a woman's perm went wrong and I had to spend all night fixing it for free. It was a story about my hustle, about learning from my mistakes. Chloe just wrinkled her perfect little nose. "Wow," she'd said, taking a delicate sip of wine. "It's just wild to think about people doing hair in their kitchens. The beauty industry has come so far, thank God." She made my origin story sound like a dirty little secret, something to be ashamed of rather than proud of. She went on and on about her family, who were supposedly prominent doctors and lawyers up in New York. She talked about their summers in Martha's Vineyard and winters in Aspen. She asked me where I grew up, and when I told her the neighborhood on the south side, her eyes widened just a fraction. "Oh," she said, her voice dropping an octave, "I've heard of that area." The implication hung in the air, thick and foul. "The ghetto. And Malik, my son, my pride, my joy." He said nothing. He just sat there smiling, that nervous, placating smile, caught between the woman who gave him life and the woman who was sucking the life out of him. He let her disrespect me in my own home, at my own table. That was the first major crack in the foundation of my world. Over the next year, it was a slow and steady erosion. Last Christmas, I paid for all of us to go to St. Bart's, a 5-star resort, first-class flights, the works. One evening we were at dinner, and I was laughing at a story Malik told, a big, full-throated laugh. Chloe leaned over and whispered to him, but I heard it clear as day. "Can you ask your mom to keep it down? People are staring." Later that night, I overheard her on the phone with a friend. "She's nice, I guess," Chloe was saying, "but just so embarrassing. Head to toe in designer labels, but you just can't take the hood out of the girl, you know? It's all so loud." Each comment was a paper cut, but 1,000 paper cuts can make you bleed out. And all the while, this girl was living a life of luxury, funded by my ghetto labor. She was eating in 5-star restaurants on my Amex, taking vacations to Cabo on my dime, and laying her head down every night in a penthouse paid for by the woman she found so deeply embarrassing. The hypocrisy was a special kind of evil. I tried to talk to Malik gently at first. We were having lunch, just the two of us, at Umi, his favorite sushi spot, a lunch I was paying for. "Baby, the way Chloe speaks about me, about our family, about where we come from, it doesn't feel right." He'd immediately get defensive, putting his chopsticks down. "Ma, you're just misunderstanding her. That's just her sense of humor. She's from a different world, that's all." "She doesn't mean it like that. She's just more reserved." "A different world?" I'd pressed. "Child, please. I've sat on charity boards with billionaires who inherited their wealth 9 generations back. And I've shared a plate of ribs with folks from my old block. Respect is a universal language. And Chloe isn't just illiterate. She's actively trying to burn the dictionary." He shut down completely. "You're just looking for reasons not to like her, Ma. Just give her a chance. You're being too sensitive." But I had given her chances, dozens of them, and she'd failed every single time. He was choosing her comfort over my dignity, and it was a choice he made again and again. The breaking point, The moment my heart didn't just crack, but shattered into a million irreparable pieces, happened this past Sunday morning. I was in my king-size bed, propped up on a mountain of silk pillows, lazily scrolling through Instagram. It was a rare, peaceful moment. Then I saw a post from one of Chloe's bougie friends, a girl named Madison I'd met once. It was a picture, a professionally shot photograph, bathed in that soft, dreamy, golden hour light that screams expensive photographer. There was my son, Malik, handsome and sharp in a custom-tailored tuxedo. And beside him, beaming, was Chloe in a flowing white designer gown, her arm linked possessively through his. They were holding champagne flutes, toasting the camera. Behind them was a backdrop of rolling green hills and a pristine, old-money-looking country club. My breath hitched in my throat. I couldn't make sense of it. A wedding. My thumb, trembling, tapped on the picture to expand the caption. My eyes scanned the words Madison had written, and that's when I saw the phrase that stopped my heart cold. So honored to witness the beautiful and exclusive union of Malik and Chloe, a truly elegant and intimate ceremony for high-class people only, wishing you a lifetime of love and happiness. No new friends exclusive, jerk high society, high-class people only. The phone slipped from my numb fingers and clattered onto the plush cream-colored rug. The air in my serene bedroom suddenly felt thin, unbreathable. A wave of ice-cold dread washed over me, immediately followed by a surge of white-hot rage that felt like my blood was boiling in my veins. A memory flashed in my mind. Malik, age 5, with a scraped knee, crying in my arms. He looked up at me with his big brown eyes and said, "Mama, I'll love you forever and ever and ever." The contrast between that memory and the betrayal on my phone screen was a physical pain. He got married. My son, my only child, the boy whose every scraped knee I had kissed, whose every fever I had nursed, whose every dream I had personally financed. He got married yesterday, and I wasn't invited. But it was so much worse than that. I wasn't just forgotten. I was banned. I was intentionally, purposefully, and maliciously excluded. I was the ghetto mother who wasn't high class enough to see her own son get married. I was the family secret they had to hide away from their elegant, exclusive friends. The shame of it, the raw, visceral pain of that rejection, was a physical blow. I literally doubled over, clutching my stomach, gasping for air that wouldn't come. All those years of sacrifice, all those 16-hour days smelling of perm solution and burnt hair. For what? To be deemed unworthy by my own child and the trifling social climbing parasite he married, the boy for whom I had built an entire kingdom, had slammed the castle gates in my face and hung a sign that said, "No riffraff allowed." I cried. Oh, girl, I let it out. I cried for a full 10 minutes. I let the ugly, gut-wrenching sobs rack my body. I let the hot tears stream down my face, staining my $1,000 silk pillowcases. I let myself feel the full, crushing weight of the betrayal. And then I stopped. I pushed myself up. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. The heartbreak didn't vanish, but it began to change. It transmuted, crystallizing from a messy, liquid pain into a cold, sharp, diamond-hard rage. They thought I was embarrassing. They thought I was ghetto. They thought I wasn't high class enough for their little party. Fine. I was about to give them a master class in a subject they knew nothing about. Consequences. I got out of my bed, walked with purpose into my sprawling home office, and sat down at my massive oak desk that overlooked the gardens. My mind, which moments before had been a chaotic storm of pain, was now disturbingly clear. They wanted to be grown. They wanted to be independent and high class. Okay. I was going to help them achieve their dreams, effective immediately. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't blow up Malik's phone with furious all-caps text messages. That's what they'd expect. That would be ghetto. No, I did what the CEO of a multi-million-dollar empire does. I strategized, First, I picked up the phone and called my lawyer, David Chin, a shark in a Tom Ford suit who had been on my payroll for 15 years. "David," I said, my voice calm and even, "I need you to do something for me this morning. I need you to pull every single financial document related to my son, Malik Jones, for the past 7 years." There was a short pause. David knew my voice. He knew when I was making a business deal and when something was wrong. "Teresa, is everything all right? You sound cold." "Everything is crystal clear, David," I said. "I want the full tuition and housing payments for his 4 years at Morehouse. I want the bill of sale for the Mercedes-Benz C-Class, the one registered in my company's name. I want a copy of the lease agreement and a record of all rent payments for the Penthouse on Peachtree, also in my company's name. And I want a detailed, itemized breakdown of all charges on the Amex Platinum card issued to him, as well as a conservative estimate of all cash allowances I have provided since his graduation. I want it all, down to the penny." "Okay," David said slowly, the gears clearly turning. "This is a substantial request, and what is the intended purpose of this information?" "I'm preparing an invoice," I said simply. Another pause. Longer this time. "An invoice. For your son." His voice was carefully neutral, but I knew him. He was intrigued. "That's right," I confirmed. "And David, one more thing. I need you to draft an immediate legally binding eviction notice for the Peachtree property. 30 days, no extensions. Use the owner requires property for personal use clause." I could almost hear him nodding on the other end of the line. He was too professional to ask for the tea, but I knew he was dying to. "I'll have a courier deliver the complete file to you by morning, Teresa," he said. "Consider it done." "Thank you, David. Send me your bill." After I hung up, a sense of profound, icy power settled in my bones. This wasn't about the money. I could lose 10 times that amount, and my lifestyle wouldn't change one iota. This was about respect. This was about a lesson, a very expensive lesson that my son had apparently failed to learn during his very expensive education. The next morning, as promised, a thick manila folder arrived. I spent an hour in my office, a cup of black coffee at my elbow, going through the documents. The numbers were staggering, even for me. Each page was a memory. The charge for the down payment on the Mercedes was the week I'd landed my biggest product distribution deal. The Amex charges for Umi Sushi, Nobu and Malibu, trips to Miami. I remembered him calling me to thank me, his voice full of joy. Now it just sounded like the voice of a con man. The rent payments for the Penthouse, a steady drain every first of the month, a gift I gave freely now felt like a theft, Morehouse tuition and fees, $98,450, Mercedes-Benz C-Class, 2021 model, $65,000, 3 years of rent, utilities, and HOA fees for the Penthouse, $86,400, Amex Platinum charges, dinners at Umi, trips to Miami, Gucci loafers, Chloe's grooming appointments for her damn Pomeranian, $42,780. Cash allowances, a conservative estimate, $20,000. The grand total came to $312,630. I stared at the number. It represented so much more than dollars. It represented love, sacrifice, and sleepless nights. It was the price tag of my motherhood. I decided to be generous. I rounded it down to a nice, clean $250,000, $250,000. Using my company's official letterhead, I typed up a formal invoice. At the bottom, I wrote, "For services, goods, and investments rendered in the establishment of the adult life of Malik Jones." Then I took the pristine eviction notice David had prepared. It was official, legal, and absolutely merciless. I placed the invoice and the eviction notice side by side in a crisp new folder. I felt no remorse, no guilt. This was not a mother punishing her child. This was a businesswoman closing out a bad investment. My son had been my passion project, but he and his new business partner, Chloe, had proven to be a catastrophic liability. And I always cut my losses. I spent the rest of the day in a state of hyper-aware calm. I knew they would come. Their arrogance was a homing beacon. They'd interpret my silence as weakness, as the hurt of a sad old woman waiting for an apology. They had no idea I was a queen sitting on my throne, waiting to pass sentence. And that brings us right back to my formal living room. To Chloe with her metaphorical handout, and to Malik with his eyes on my expensive rug, asking for a $50,000 wedding gift. I let the silence after their request hang for a beat too long, just to savor the pure, uncut entitlement radiating from Chloe's pores. Then I smiled. It was a slow, deliberate smile that was all teeth and no warmth. A wedding gift, I said, my voice as smooth as aged cognac. Of course. How completely thoughtless of me. You're starting a new life together. You absolutely must be set up for success. Chloe's smug expression widened. She thought she'd won. She shot a triumphant look at Malik, who finally looked up at me, a wave of pathetic relief washing over his features. See, it was that easy. Good old Ma would always come through with the cash. Why don't you two make yourselves comfortable? I said, gesturing to the white chenille sofa that cost more than their exclusive wedding probably did. Let me just pop into my office. I have some paperwork for you that should get everything started. They sat down, Chloe perching on the edge of the cushions as if she were already the lady of a grand Buckhead manor. I turned and walked out of the room, my steps measured and unhurried. I could feel their expectant eyes on my back. I went into my office and picked up the folder. It felt heavy in my hands. It felt like justice. When I walked back into the living room, Chloe was idly scrolling on her phone, probably admiring photos of her elegant ceremony. Malik was looking around the room, a familiar, comfortable expression on his face. This was home, after all. The place where problems magically disappeared and bank accounts magically refilled. I stopped directly in front of them, right before the glass coffee table. Here we are, I said, my voice still light and airy. I didn't hand the folder to my son. My business was no longer with him. I placed it squarely in front of Chloe. She looked up from her phone, a flicker of annoyance on her face, as if I were a servant disturbing her. What's this? The wire transfer confirmation? It's something better, I said, my smile unwavering. It's a clean slate, a fresh start. Open it. She picked up the folder with a flick of her wrist, her French manicured nails tapping impatiently. She opened it. I watched her face, and it was like watching a movie of a building demolition in slow motion. First, confusion, her brow furrowed. Her perfectly glossed lips formed a little O of surprise. She was staring at the invoice, at the big, bold number at the bottom. 250,000. Oh. What is this? She whispered, her voice losing its chirpy, condescending edge. Is this some kind of joke? Keep reading, I said softly. There's more. Malik leaned over his wife's shoulder, his face a mask of bewilderment. He saw the invoice, then his eyes darted to the second paper tucked neatly behind it, the one with the cold block letters at the top. Official notice to vacate. The blood drained from his face so fast he went gray. He looked like he'd just seen a ghost. What is this? He stammered. Chloe's head snapped up. Her eyes, which had been so cold and smug just moments before, were now wide with a furious panicked disbelief. Eviction notice? She shrieked, her voice cracking and climbing an octave. You're evicting us? Me? I asked, feigning shock. I placed a hand dramatically on my chest. Oh, goodness, no, honey, I'm not evicting you. The owner of the property is. And as it happens, the owner of the property is me. The color flooded back into Chloe's face in blotchy, ugly patches of red. You can't do this. This is insane. We just got married. I know, I said. And now my voice dropped the pretense, becoming as cold and as hard as the diamonds on my wrist. I saw it on Instagram. It looked absolutely lovely. Very exclusive. The word hung in the air between us like a charged particle. Malik flinched as if I physically slapped him across the face. You're doing all of this because you weren't invited? Chloe screamed, scrambling to her feet, the folder falling to the floor. Are you that petty? Are you that ghetto? And that was it. That was the word that detonated the last shred of my composure. Ghetto. I took one slow, deliberate step toward her, and for the first time, she instinctively took a step back. Let me tell you something about ghetto, you little girl. Ghetto is working a 16-hour double shift on your feet until your ankles swell up, just to make sure your son has food in his belly and a roof over his head. Whereas ghetto is scrubbing other people's toilets on your hands and knees, praying to God for a better life for your child, smelling like bleach and cheap soap at the end of the day. Ghetto is building a multi-million-dollar empire from dirt and dreams with your own two hands so that your son never has to experience a single day of hardship in his entire goddamn life. I pointed a long, steady finger right in her face. And what you are is a trifling, ungrateful, disrespectful leech who thought she could waltz into the house that ghetto built, insult the woman who funds her entire existence, and then have the unmitigated audacity to ask for a handout. You banned me from my son's wedding because you were embarrassed by me. Well, honey, you are about to find out what real embarrassment feels like. I finally turned my full, undiluted fury onto my son. He was a statue on the couch, his face pale, his eyes swimming with tears. Ma, please, he whispered, his voice trembling. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to tell you. Chloe said it would be better. Chloe said, I cut him off, my voice sharp as a shard of glass. Chloe said, are you a man or are you a puppet? I raised you to be a king, Malik. I put you in rooms with powerful men so you could learn to be one. But you're sitting here letting this court jester lead you around by a string. You stood by, silent as a church mouse, while she disrespected the woman who gave you everything. You conspired with her to humiliate me, to cut me out of the single most important day of your life, all because you were ashamed of where you come from. Ashamed of me. I gestured to the papers scattered on my floor. You want to be high class? You want to be independent? Congratulations. Your wish is my command. That invoice is for $250,000, a deeply discounted summary of the life I handed you on a silver platter. And that eviction notice gives you 30 days to vacate my property. I want you to start your new, independent, high-class life by figuring out how to pay your own damn rent. That's when Chloe snapped. She let out a guttural scream of pure feral rage that had nothing to do with her carefully constructed bougie persona. You old bitch! She shrieked and she lunged at me, her manicured nails curled into claws. She never even got close. I don't just have a security system. I have security. A man named Marcus, a former NFL player, built like a refrigerator, who is always discreetly on the property when I'm home alone. I had buzzed him on my way back from the office. He stepped into the room from the hallway, moving with a silent, terrifying speed. He caught Chloe by her upper arms before she was even within 5 feet of me, lifting her slightly off the ground. She thrashed in his grip like a trapped animal, screaming a stream of obscenities that would make a sailor blush. Her mask of sophisticated elegance had not just slipped. It had been shattered, revealing the ugly, grasping, desperate shrew underneath. Let go of me. I'll sue you. I'll sue her for everything she has. Marcus didn't even flinch. He just held her, his expression as bored as if he were holding a misbehaving poodle. I looked at my son, who was now openly sobbing, his head buried in his hands. Get her out of my house, Malik, I said, my voice completely devoid of emotion. It was the voice of a CEO firing an incompetent employee. And then get yourself out. You have 30 days to remove your personal belongings from the apartment. After that, anything left behind will be considered a donation to Goodwill. Malik looked up at me, his face a pathetic mess of tears and snot. Ma, where are we supposed to go? What are we supposed to do? We have nothing. I gave him a cold, empty smile, a smile that said, ooh, game over. I don't know, son. That sounds like a problem for a big married man to solve. You and your high-class wife will have to figure that out together. Perhaps her prominent doctor and lawyer family can help you with the down payment on that motel room. Marcus began escorting the struggling, screaming Chloe toward the front door. Malik stumbled after them, looking back at me one last time, his eyes pleading for a reprieve that would never come. I just turned my back on him. I walked over to the massive window overlooking my driveway and watched as Marcus calmly deposited Chloe on the hot pavement. Malik rushed to her side, and they immediately began to argue, pointing furiously at my house, at each other. Finally, they scrambled into Malik's Mercedes, Mercedes, and tore out of my driveway, leaving a trail of burnt rubber and broken dreams. The profound silence that descended upon my house in their wake was the most beautiful, peaceful sound I had ever heard. The aftermath, girl, was sweeter than any dessert my chef could ever prepare. Malik called. He texted. He sent long, rambling emails overflowing with apologies, excuses, and blame. Chloe made me do it. I was scared. I messed up. I deleted them all without reading past the first line. Chloe, I heard from a friend of a friend, tried to get a lawyer to fight the eviction. The lawyer, upon reviewing the ironclad lease agreement that was solely in my company's name, apparently told her not to waste her time or his. They couldn't afford the Penthouse, obviously. They couldn't afford a studio apartment in a decent part of town. And it turns out Chloe's prominent family up north were not quite as wealthy or as generous as she had advertised. They ended up, and I swear on my mother's grave, this is the God's honest truth, in a cheap extended stay motel off the highway in College Park. The kind with the stained carpets, the flickering neon signs, and the hourly rates. My old friend, who still runs a salon in that area, told me she saw them in the grocery store. Said they looked miserable, fighting over a box of generic cereal. The shiny black Mercedes. Oh, that was repossessed within a week. I got the notification from the finance company myself. It was a final satisfying piece of paperwork to sign. And me, honey, I didn't just survive. I thrived. On day 31, I had a professional cleaning crew go into the Peachtree Penthouse. They scrubbed the place clean of every last trace of Malik and Chloe's existence. And then I brought in my personal contractors. I had them bring in sledgehammers. I watched via FaceTime as they demolished the gourmet kitchen Chloe had always bragged about but never used. They tore down the wall between the master bedroom and the living room. Then they installed floor-to-ceiling, backlit, custom-built shelving across every available wall. Soft, creamy white wood with polished chrome hardware. 2 weeks later, I stood in the middle of the transformed space. The glittering Atlanta skyline was my wallpaper. The space that had once housed my greatest disappointment was now a monument to my resilience. It was my new closet, a glorious walk-in 2-bedroom sanctuary for my shoes and handbags. I walked over to the first shelf, took a pristine pair of Christian Louboutin pumps with their iconic defiant red soles, and placed them in the center. Then came the Jimmy Choos, the Manolos, the Chanels, the Guccis. Each pair was a trophy from a battle I had won in the boardroom. Each pair a reminder that I am the architect of my own destiny. I built this kingdom, and I am its one and only ruler. They wanted to be high class. Bless their hearts. They're living in a roach-infested motel, sharing a microwave. Meanwhile, I'm standing in a shoe closet bigger than most people's apartments, sipping vintage Dom Perignon and deciding which pair of $1,000 heels to wear to dinner. And that, my sister, is not just revenge. That's a renovation.